The rain hammered against the windows of Sweet Dreams Bakery as pulled his black Mercedes into the parking lot. He hadn't planned to stop here. His driver was sick today and had decided to drive himself to the office. But something about the warm glow from the bakery windows made him pause. Maybe it was the stress of the board meeting he'd just left, or perhaps the memory of his grandmother's apple pie that suddenly filled his mind. Was worth $47 million. At 38 years old, he owned Industries, a company that manufactured specialized equipment for hospitals across the country. His business had grown from a small garage operation to a major corporation employing over 2,000 people. Success had come through hard work, but often felt disconnected from the everyday struggles that most people faced. He stepped out of his car, adjusting his expensive suit jacket against the cool October air. The bakery was small and cozy, with checkered tablecloths and the sweet smell of fresh bread filling the space. Only a few customers were inside, browsing the display cases filled with colorful cakes and pastries. Behind the counter stood a young woman with tired eyes and flour-dusted apron. Her name tag read Sarah. She was helping an elderly man choose between different types of muffins when noticed another customer waiting patiently in line. The woman was in her mid-30s, wearing a worn jacket and clutching a small purse tightly in her hands. Her name was Diana Washington, though didn't know that yet. Diana worked 2 jobs to support her 8-year-old daughter. She cleaned office buildings early in the morning and worked at a local grocery store in the evenings. Every dollar mattered in Diana's world. Diana had been saving for weeks for this moment. Tomorrow was birthday, and her daughter had been talking about the beautiful cakes she'd seen in Sweet Dreams Bakery's window. Diana had walked past this bakery countless times, always knowing the cakes were beyond her budget. But she'd been setting aside a few dollars here and there, hoping to make her daughter's birthday special. Found himself listening as Diana approached the counter. Her voice was soft but determined as she spoke to Sarah. "Excuse me," Diana said. "I was wondering about that birthday cake in the window, the one with the pink roses and the princess castle on top. My daughter's birthday is tomorrow, and she's been talking about that cake for months." Sarah's face lit up with a genuine smile. "Oh, that's one of our most popular designs. It's absolutely beautiful. Let me check the price for you." She walked over to a computer and typed in some information. "That particular cake is $95. Watched as Diana's face fell slightly. She had $58 saved up, money that had taken her 2 months to accumulate. She had hoped the cake might be closer to her budget, but she wasn't ready to give up yet. "I understand that's the regular price," Diana said carefully. "But I was wondering if there might be any way to get a discount. Maybe if there's a small imperfection, or if you have any cakes from yesterday that need to be sold. My daughter is turning 8, and she's been through a really tough year." Diana's voice wavered slightly as she continued. "Her father left us last spring, and we had to move to a smaller apartment. She hasn't complained once, but I know she misses the birthday parties we used to have. I just want to give her something special, something that will make her feel like the princess she is." Sarah's expression softened with sympathy. She genuinely wanted to help, but the bakery had strict policies about pricing. The owner, Mr., was struggling to keep the business profitable, and every sale mattered. "I really wish I could help you," Sarah said. "But that's our only Princess Castle cake, and it was made fresh this morning. Mr. doesn't usually allow discounts on our specialty cakes. Maybe I could show you some of our smaller cakes. We have some lovely 8-inch rounds for $35. Diana nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. She looked at the smaller cakes, but they seemed so ordinary compared to the magical castle cake her daughter had been dreaming about. Had been so good lately, helping with household chores and never asking for toys or treats that they couldn't afford. Continued to observe from a nearby table where he'd sat down with a coffee. He remembered being 8 years old himself, living with his grandmother after his parents died in a car accident. His grandmother had worked 3 jobs to make ends meet, but she had always found a way to make his birthday special. Even when money was tight, she would bake him a cake from scratch and sing to him while he blew out the candles. "Could I maybe pay half now and half next week?" Diana asked hopefully. "I get paid again on Friday. I know it's not usual, but I'm a regular customer. I buy my bread here every Sunday after church." Sarah looked around nervously. Mr. was in the back office, and she knew he was already stressed about the bakery's finances. Several larger chain stores had opened nearby, making business more challenging. She wanted to help Diana, but she also needed to keep her job. "I'm sorry," Sarah said quietly. "I don't think I can do that without asking Mister, and he's in an important phone call right now. Maybe you could come back tomorrow morning. Sometimes he's more flexible about things like that." Diana's shoulders sagged. Tomorrow was birthday, and the party was planned for the afternoon. Olive's friends from school were coming over to their small apartment. Diana had already invited them, and she couldn't bear the thought of disappointing her daughter in front of her friends. "I understand," Diana said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Thank you for being so kind about it. Maybe I'll take one of the smaller cakes instead." As Diana looked at the less expensive options, found himself thinking about his own company's values. Industries had a mission statement about helping communities and making healthcare more accessible. Regularly donated to charities, and had established a foundation that provided medical equipment to hospitals. But somehow, sitting in this small bakery, he realized how disconnected he'd become from individual stories of struggle and hope. He thought about his last board meeting, where they discussed a new contract worth $3 million. To and his company, that was just another business deal. But here was a mother who had spent 2 months saving $58 to make her daughter's birthday special. The contrast was striking and humbling. Diana was now looking at a simple chocolate cake with basic decorating when made a decision that would change both their lives. He had been raised by a woman who taught him that kindness was the most important currency in the world. His grandmother used to say, "When you have the power to make someone's day better, you have a responsibility to use that power." Stood up and walked toward the counter. He wasn't sure exactly what he was going to do, but he knew he couldn't just sit there and watch this mother struggle to give her daughter a magical birthday. "Excuse me," said, addressing Sarah. "I couldn't help but overhear about the Princess Castle cake. I'd like to buy it." Diana looked up, confused. Sarah nodded and began to ring up the purchase for. "Actually," continued, "I'd like to buy it as a gift for this young lady's daughter." He turned to Diana with a warm smile. "If that's okay with you, of course. I have a feeling your daughter deserves a princess cake for her 8th birthday." Diana stared at him in shock. She had never experienced such unexpected kindness from a stranger. Her first instinct was to refuse. She had been raised to be independent and to work for everything she received. But looking at this man's sincere expression, she sensed that his offer came from a genuine place of goodness. I can't let you do that," Diana stammered. "You don't even know us, that's too generous." Smiled gently. "My name is, and you're right, I don't know you yet, but I know what it's like to have someone go out of their way to make a child feel special. My grandmother did that for me many times when I was growing up. Sometimes kindness from strangers is how the world keeps turning." He pulled out his wallet and handed his credit card to Sarah. "Please ring up the Princess Castle cake, and whatever other birthday supplies this mother might need for tomorrow's celebration." Diana felt tears welling up in her eyes. "Sir, mister, this is incredibly kind, but I have money. I can pay for part of it. I don't want you to think I was trying to get something for free. I work hard for everything my daughter and I have." Nodded respectfully. "I can tell you're a mother. This isn't about charity. This is about one person wanting to help make a little girl's birthday magical. Sometimes we all need a helping hand, and sometimes we're in a position to offer one. Today, I'm lucky enough to be able to offer." Sarah processed the payment, still amazed at what was happening. In her 3 years working at the bakery, she had never witnessed such spontaneous generosity. She carefully boxed the beautiful Princess Castle cake, making sure it was secure for transport. "What's your daughter's name?" asked Diana as they waited for the cake to be prepared. Diana replied, wiping away a tear. "She's the sweetest, most resilient little girl you've ever met. She's been my strength through everything we've been going through this year." Thought about his own daughter for a moment. He didn't have children yet, but he had, and remembered how important birthdays had been to him as a child. Every birthday was a celebration of making it another year, of growing bigger and stronger, of having dreams for the future. "I'm sure is going to love this cake," said, "and I'm sure she's going to be proud to have such a caring mother who worked so hard to make her day special." Diana looked at this stranger who had just changed her daughter's birthday completely. "Mister, I don't know how to thank you, is going to be so happy. She's going to think I'm magic for getting her dream cake." Laughed warmly. "You are magic. You're her mother and you've been working 2 jobs to take care of her. That's the most powerful magic there is." As Sarah finished preparing the cake box, she included some birthday candles and a small card. "These are compliments of the bakery," she said with a smile. "I hope has the most wonderful birthday." Helped Diana carry the cake box to her car, an old that had seen better days but was obviously well-maintained. Diana had always taken pride in keeping her car clean and running, even when repairs were expensive. "Mister," Diana said as they reached her car, "I want you to know that this kindness won't be forgotten. Someday, when I'm in a position to help someone else, I'm going to remember this moment and pay it forward." Smiled, "That's all anyone can ask for. We're all just trying to help each other get through life a little easier." As Diana drove away with the precious cake secured in her back seat, stood in the parking lot for a moment. The rain had stopped, and the late afternoon sun was breaking through the clouds. He realized that in buying that cake, he had received something valuable in return. He had been reminded of what really mattered in life. The business world that lived in was often focused on quarterly reports, profit margins, and competitive strategies. But standing in that bakery, watching a mother's love for her child, had reminded him of simpler and more important truths. Success wasn't just about building wealth or expanding companies. It was about using whatever resources you had to make the world a little bit better for someone else. Got back in his Mercedes, but instead of going to his office as planned, he drove home early. He had some thinking to do about how he wanted to live his life moving forward. The encounter with Diana had planted a seed of an idea in his mind, though he wasn't yet sure what it would grow into. That evening found himself looking through old photo albums, searching for pictures of his 8th birthday. He found one where his grandmother had made him a cake shaped like a baseball diamond because he loved playing Little League. The cake wasn't perfect. The frosting was a little lopsided and the decorations were simple, but his smile in that photo was radiant. He remembered how special that cake had made him feel. His grandmother had worked double shifts at the diner where she was a waitress, but she had still stayed up late the night before his birthday to create something magical for him. That cake represented love, sacrifice, and the belief that every child deserved to feel celebrated. Realized that today he had been able to give that same gift through her mother. It felt like his grandmother would have been proud of his decision. She had always taught him that when you have more than you need, the right thing to do is help others who are struggling. As he prepared for bed that night, found himself wondering about Diana and what would tomorrow's birthday party be like? Would friends be impressed by the beautiful castle cake? Would Diana feel proud as she watched her daughter's face light up when she saw her dream cake? Fell asleep with a smile on his face, knowing that somewhere across town, a little girl was going to have the birthday she had been dreaming about. And tomorrow, he would wake up with a new understanding of what it truly meant to use his success in meaningful ways. The next morning would bring his birthday party, but it would also bring unexpected developments that none of them could have predicted. The simple act of kindness in a small bakery was about to create ripple effects that would touch many more lives in ways that Diana and were just beginning to discover. Diana barely slept that night. The beautiful Princess Castle cake sat safely in her refrigerator, but her mind kept racing with thoughts about the generous stranger who had made his birthday dream come true. She kept getting up to peek at the cake, making sure it was real and not just something she had imagined. At 6 in the morning, Diana was already awake, preparing for his birthday party. She had taken the day off from both of her jobs, which meant losing pay she couldn't really afford, but some things were more important than money. Today was about celebrating her daughter, the bright light that kept her going through all the challenges they faced. Diana had spent weeks planning this party on their tight budget. She had made decorations from construction paper and ribbons she found on sale. The apartment was small, but she had rearranged the furniture to create space for 8 children to play games and eat cake. She had even borrowed folding chairs from their neighbor, Mrs., who had become like a grandmother too. Woke up to the smell of her favorite breakfast, pancakes with strawberries. Diana had saved up to buy fresh strawberries, knowing how much her daughter loved them. As padded into the kitchen in her pajamas, her eyes widened at the birthday decorations that had appeared overnight. "Happy birthday, my sweet girl," Diana said, wrapping her daughter in a tight hug. "You're 8 years old today." Beamed with excitement. "Mama, everything looks so pretty. Did you stay up all night making these decorations?" "Just for a little while," Diana said, not mentioning that she had worked until nearly midnight to get everything perfect. "But I have an even bigger surprise for you," Close your eyes. Diana led to the refrigerator and carefully removed the Princess Castle cake. She had been worried all night that something might happen to it, but it was still perfect. The pink roses looked fresh, and the delicate castle towers sparkled with edible glitter. "Okay, you can look now," Diana said softly. Opened her eyes and gasped. For a moment she was completely speechless, staring at the cake she had admired through the bakery window so many times. Her eyes filled with tears of pure joy. "Mama, is this really my cake? The Princess Castle cake from Sweet Dreams Bakery," whispered, as if speaking too loudly might make it disappear. Diana nodded, fighting back her own tears. "It's all yours, birthday girl, just like a real princess deserves." Threw her arms around her mother. "This is the most beautiful cake in the whole world. Wait until Jasmine and Tyler see it. They're going to think we live in a real castle." Diana's heart swelled with happiness. All the sacrifices and struggles were worth it to see this pure joy on her daughter's face. Had been through so much in the past year, her father leaving, moving to a smaller apartment, watching her mother work constantly just to make ends meet. But despite everything, remained optimistic and kind. While ate her birthday breakfast, Diana thought about. She realized she didn't know much about him beyond his name and his incredible generosity. She had been so shocked by his kindness that she hadn't asked many questions, but she wanted to find a way to properly thank him and maybe even let him know how much his gesture meant too. Around noon, children started arriving for the party. Diana watched from the kitchen as proudly showed off her decorations to each friend who walked through the door. The apartment was soon filled with laughter and excited chatter. "Your mom did such a good job with the decorations," said Jasmine's best friend from school. "And I can't wait to see your cake." Tyler, a boy from their class, was examining the homemade birthday banner. "My mom never makes decorations like this. She just buys them from the store. These look way cooler because they're special." Diana smiled, overhearing how much the children appreciated the handmade touches. Sometimes the things you created with love meant more than anything you could buy. The party games were simple but fun. Diana had organized a treasure hunt with clues hidden around the small apartment. She had made prizes from dollar store items, but she had wrapped them beautifully, and the children were thrilled with their small treasures. They played musical chairs using Diana's old radio and freeze dance that had everyone giggling. But the moment everyone had been waiting for was cake time. Diana carefully carried the Princess Castle cake from the kitchen, and the children's reactions were everything she had hoped for and more. "Oh my gosh," Jasmine exclaimed. "That's the most amazing cake I've ever seen." "It looks like a real castle," Tyler added. "How did your mom get something so fancy?" Beamed with pride, but Diana could see her daughter struggling with how to answer. Was honest by nature, but she also didn't want to embarrass her mother by admitting they couldn't usually afford such expensive things. "My mama worked really hard to get this cake for me," said simply. "She's the best mama in the world." Diana placed 8 candles on the castle towers and lit them carefully. As the children gathered around singing, "Happy Birthday," Diana thought about again. She wondered if he knew that his kindness was creating this perfect moment, surrounded by children whose eyes were wide with wonder at the beautiful cake. Closed her eyes tightly to make her birthday wish, and Diana found herself wondering what her daughter was wishing for. When blew out all the candles in one breath, everyone cheered. As Diana cut the cake, she was amazed at how delicious it was. The Sweet Dreams Bakery had used real vanilla and fresh ingredients. Each layer was moist and flavorful, and the frosting was the perfect level of sweetness. The children were quiet for several minutes as they savored their slices, which was unusual for such an energetic group. "Mrs. Washington," said Emma, a quiet girl from class, "this is the best cake I've ever tasted. My birthday is next month, and I hope my parents can get me one like this." Diana's heart ached a little, knowing that many of these families were struggling just like she was. Emma's parents both worked at the local factory, and Diana knew they were saving money to fix their car. But she also felt grateful that friends could share in this special moment. After cake, the children played for another hour before parents started arriving to pick them up. Each child thanked Diana politely and told how much fun they'd had. Diana noticed that several parents looked around the small apartment with kind eyes, appreciating the effort that had gone into making the day special. Mrs. came over after the last child had been picked up. She helped Diana clean up while played with her new birthday presents. mostly small toys and books that her friends' families had carefully chosen within their budgets. Mrs. said as they washed dishes, "That was one of the most beautiful birthday parties I've ever seen. That cake was incredible, but more than that, you can see how much love went into everything." Diana told Mrs. about the stranger at the bakery who had bought the cake. Mrs. listened with amazement, shaking her head in wonder at such unexpected kindness. "There are still good people in this world," Mrs. said. "And you know what? Good things happen to good people. You work so hard and you're such a loving mother. You deserve to have someone help makes day special." That evening, after had fallen asleep clutching her favorite new birthday book, Diana sat at her small kitchen table and did something she rarely had time for. She wrote in a journal. She had kept a journal sporadically since high school, but lately she'd been too tired and busy to write. Tonight felt different. She wanted to remember every detail of this day, not just because of the beautiful cake, but because of what it represented. A stranger had seen her struggle and chosen to help without asking for anything in return. In a world that often felt harsh and unforgiving, had restored her faith in human kindness. Diana wrote about's reaction to the cake, the joy on her friends' faces, and the feeling of being able to give her daughter something truly special. But she also wrote about the bigger impact of generosity. It wasn't just about the money he had spent. It was about feeling seen and valued as a person who mattered. For months, Diana had felt invisible. She cleaned office buildings in the early morning hours when most people were asleep. She stocked shelves at the grocery store during busy times when customers barely noticed the employees. She was working hard every day, but she often felt like her efforts went unnoticed by the world. Had not only noticed her, but he had recognized her love for her daughter and wanted to honor it. That recognition meant as much as the cake itself. Meanwhile, across town, was having dinner at his usual restaurant, a upscale steakhouse where he often conducted business meetings. But tonight, he was dining alone, and his mind kept drifting back to the bakery. He found himself wondering if Diana had had a good birthday party. Realized that in all his years of charitable giving and business success, he had rarely experienced such direct connection to the impact of his actions. When he donated to hospitals or educational foundations, he received thank you letters and tax receipts, but he didn't see the faces of the individual people who benefited. Yesterday had been different. He thought about calling the bakery to ask if they had Diana's contact information, but he worried that might seem intrusive. He had acted on impulse, wanting to help in the moment, and he didn't want Diana to feel obligated to maintain contact with him. But couldn't shake the feeling that meeting Diana had been important in ways he was still discovering. There was something about her dignity in asking for help, her obvious love for her daughter, and her gracious acceptance of his offer that had touched something deep in his heart. The next morning, arrived at his office with a new sense of purpose. Industries had always been successful, but began to wonder if there were ways to use his company's resources to help families like Diana's on a larger scale. He called his assistant, Jennifer, into his office. Jennifer had worked for 5 years and knew him well enough to recognize when he was excited about a new idea. "Jennifer, I want you to research local family assistance programs," said. "Not just the big charities, but organizations that help working families who are struggling to make ends meet. I'm particularly interested in programs that help single mothers." Jennifer made notes as explained his thoughts. He was beginning to envision a foundation that could help bridge the gap for families who were working hard but still struggling to afford life's special moments. "Also," continued, "I want to look into partnering with local businesses. Maybe we could create a program that helps families afford things like birthday cakes, school supplies, or other expenses that aren't covered by traditional assistance programs." As Jennifer left to begin her research, felt energized in a way he hadn't experienced in months. Building his company had always been personally fulfilling, but this felt different. This felt like a way to use his success to create the kind of moments he had witnessed between Diana and... Later that day, Diana was back at work at the grocery store. She was restocking the produce section when she overheard two customers talking about a birthday party they were planning for their son. "The cake from Sweet Dreams Bakery costs almost $100, one woman was saying to the other. "It's beautiful, but it's just so expensive. I don't know how people afford things like that." Diana paused in her work, remembering her own struggle to afford cake just 2 days ago. She thought about and wondered if there were other families who needed the same kind of unexpected kindness. An idea began to form in Diana's mind. She didn't have much money, but she had something else valuable, her own experience of receiving help when she needed it most. Maybe there was a way she could pay forward the kindness had shown her, even with her limited resources. That evening, Diana made a decision that would surprise everyone who knew her. She called Sweet Dreams Bakery and asked to speak with Sarah, the young woman who had been so understanding during her visit. "Hi, Sarah, this is Diana Washington. You might remember me from yesterday. A kind man bought my daughter's birthday cake." "Of course I remember you," Sarah said warmly. "How was the birthday party? Did your daughter love the cake?" "It was perfect," Diana replied. "But I'm calling because I want to do something special. I want to start a fund at your bakery to help other families afford birthday cakes for their children. I know I can't contribute much money, but I want to start with whatever I can give." Sarah was quiet for a moment, touched by the offer. "That's incredibly generous of you, Diana. Let me talk to Mister about how we could set something like that up." Diana's plan was simple but meaningful. She would contribute $10 each month to a fund that could help subsidize birthday cakes for families in need. She hoped that other customers might contribute too, and that maybe would hear about it and want to support the effort. As Diana hung up the phone, she felt a sense of purpose that went beyond her daily struggles to make ends meet. Kindness had not only given a beautiful birthday, but it had inspired Diana to become part of a chain of generosity that could help other children experience the same joy. She didn't know that her phone call to the bakery was about to set in motion a series of events that would bring her and back together in ways neither of them could have imagined. The simple act of buying a birthday cake was about to grow into something much larger, touching the lives of dozens of families and creating a community of kindness that would surprise everyone involved. Diana fell asleep that night with a smile on her face, knowing that birthday cake. Sarah hung up the phone from her conversation with Diana and immediately went to find Mr., the owner of Sweet Dreams Bakery. She found him in his small office behind the kitchen, reviewing invoices and looking stressed about the month's expenses. The bakery had been struggling to compete with larger chain stores, and every decision felt crucial to keeping the business alive. "Mister," Sarah said, knocking gently on the door frame, "I just got an interesting phone call that I think you should hear about." Harold looked up from his paperwork. At 55, he had owned the bakery for 12 years, taking it over from the previous owner who had been his mentor. Harold genuinely cared about his community and had always tried to make the bakery a welcoming place, but the financial pressures of running a small business often kept him awake at night. Sarah explained Diana's phone call and her desire to start a fund to help other families afford birthday cakes. As she spoke, Harold's expression shifted from confusion to interest to genuine excitement. "You know, Sarah," Harold said, leaning back in his chair, "I've been thinking about ways to give back to the community that has supported us all these years. Maybe this is exactly the kind of opportunity we've been looking for." Harold had always felt guilty when families came into his bakery and couldn't afford the cakes their children wanted. He had occasionally given discounts when he could afford to, but he had never had a systematic way to help. Diana's idea could be the perfect solution. "Here's what I'm thinking," Harold continued. "What if we match whatever donations people contribute to this fund, and what if we reach out to other local businesses to see if they want to be involved?" Sarah's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. She had always loved working at the bakery because of moments like the one she had witnessed between Diana and. The chance to create more of those moments felt like a dream come true. Over the next few days, Harold and Sarah worked together to develop a plan. They decided to call it the Sweet Dreams Foundation and created a simple system where families could apply for assistance with birthday cakes. They would verify that families met certain income guidelines, but they wanted the process to be dignified and respectful. Harold also decided to do something that surprised Sarah. He called the local newspaper, the Community Herald, and asked if they would be interested in writing a story about the foundation. Harold rarely sought publicity for the bakery, but he realized that media coverage might help them find more donors and reach more families who could benefit. The reporter who came to interview Harold was Lisa, a young journalist who specialized in human interest stories. Lisa was immediately intrigued by the story of a mysterious benefactor who had bought a birthday cake for a struggling mother. inspiring her to start a foundation to help other families. "Mr. Lisa said as she took notes, do you know who the man was who bought the original cake? This story would be even more compelling if we could interview him." Harold shook his head. "Sarah said he paid with a credit card, so we have his name, but we don't have any contact information beyond that. He seemed like a private person who just wanted to do something kind." Lisa made a note to try to track down. In a town the size of, there couldn't be too many people with that name. She had a feeling that finding him might lead to an even better story. Meanwhile, was completely unaware that his simple act of kindness was creating ripple effects throughout the community. He had been busy with work, focusing on a new product launch that required extensive coordination with his development team. Industries was releasing an innovative piece of medical equipment that could help small hospitals provide better patient care, and the launch was consuming most of his attention. But even with his busy schedule, found himself thinking about Diana and regularly. He had never followed up on an act of charity before, but something about their story had stayed with him. He found himself driving past Sweet Dreams Bakery on his way to work, hoping he might glimpse Diana picking up fresh bread or see some sign that everything was going well for her family. 3 weeks after his birthday party, finally decided to stop at the bakery again. He told himself he just wanted a good cup of coffee, but he was really hoping to hear some news about Diana and her daughter. When he walked in, he immediately noticed a small sign on the counter that he hadn't seen before. The sign read, "Sweet Dreams Foundation, helping local families celebrate special moments. Ask us how you can help make a child's birthday dream come true." Approached the counter where Sarah was working. She recognized him immediately and greeted him with a warm smile. "Mister, it's so good to see you again. I was actually hoping you might come back in." "I see you have something new here," said, gesturing toward the foundation sign. "What's this all about?" Sarah's face lit up with excitement as she explained how Diana's phone call had inspired the Sweet Dreams Foundation. She told about the families they had already helped, the support they had received from other local businesses, and the positive response from the community. "It all started because of what you did for Diana Washington and her daughter," Sarah said. "Diana was so moved by your kindness that she wanted to find a way to help other families experience the same thing. She actually started the fund with her own money, even though I know she doesn't have much to spare." Listened with amazement. He had expected that his gesture might make his birthday special, but he had never imagined it would inspire Diana to create something that could help other children. The fact that Diana, despite her own financial struggles, had chosen to use her limited resources to help others moved him deeply. "Is Diana still involved with the foundation?" asked. "Oh yes," Sarah replied. "She comes in every week to add $10 to the fund, and she's been helping us identify families who might need assistance. She works at grocery, and she's always meeting customers who are struggling to make ends meet." Sarah paused, then added, "Actually, there's going to be an article about the foundation in this week's newspaper. The reporter wanted to interview you too, if that would be okay. She said the story would be more complete if she could talk to the person whose generosity started it all." Felt a mixture of pride and humility. He was proud that his actions had led to something so positive, but he had always preferred to keep his charitable activities private. However, he realized that publicity for the foundation might help it raise more money and reach more families. "I'd be happy to talk to the reporter," said. "When is the article coming out?" "This Thursday," Sarah replied. "Lisa is the reporter. She seems really excited about the story." That evening, called Industries Marketing Director to discuss the upcoming article. His company had always maintained a positive community profile, but wanted to make sure the story focused on the foundation and the families it helped rather than on his personal wealth or business success. Thursday morning, woke up early to read the article. The Community Herald had given the story front-page placement with the headline, "Local Bakery Foundation Born from Act of Kindness." Lisa had done an excellent job telling the story while respecting everyone's privacy. The article explained how an anonymous Good Samaritan's purchase of a birthday cake had inspired a struggling mother to create a foundation that had already helped 15 local families. It included quotes from Harold about the bakery's commitment to the community and from several families who had benefited from the foundation. Was pleased to see that Lisa had mentioned him only as a local businessman who wished to remain anonymous, and had focused most of the article on Diana's inspiration and the foundation's impact. There was a quote from Diana that particularly moved him. "When someone showed such kindness to my daughter and me, I realized that I wanted to be part of making that same magic happen for other children. Even though I don't have much money, I have the experience of knowing how much it means when someone cares enough to help." The article also included information about how people could donate to the Sweet Dreams Foundation and how families could apply for assistance. Decided to make a significant contribution to the foundation, but he wanted to do it in a way that wouldn't overshadow the community-driven nature of the effort. That afternoon, called the bakery and asked to speak with Harold directly. When Harold came to the phone, introduced himself, and explained that he was the person who had bought Diana's cake. "Mr. Harold said with genuine enthusiasm, "I am so grateful for what you did, not just for Diana and her daughter, but for inspiring this entire foundation. We've helped so many families already, and it's all because of your kindness." Explained that he wanted to make a donation to the foundation, but he had a specific idea about how to structure it. Instead of making one large donation, he wanted to create a matching fund that would double every donation the foundation received from community members for the next year. "I don't want to take over the foundation or change its character," explained, "but I want to make sure it has the resources it needs to help as many families as possible, and I think the matching fund might encourage other people to donate too." Harold was thrilled with the proposal. He had been worried about the foundation's long-term sustainability, and its matching fund would provide exactly the kind of stability they needed. The following week, the newspaper ran a follow-up story announcing the anonymous matching fund. The response from the community was overwhelming. Local businesses started making regular donations, church groups organized fundraisers, and individual families contributed whatever they could afford. Diana read the follow-up article during her break at the grocery store, and she realized that was probably the anonymous donor who had created the matching fund. She felt a mixture of gratitude and amazement that the simple act of buying a birthday cake had grown into something so substantial. More importantly, Diana was seeing the direct impact of the foundation's work. Mrs., a customer at the grocery store, had approached Diana with tears in her eyes to thank her for helping her son Roberto get a superhero birthday cake. The Hendersons, a young couple struggling with medical bills, had been able to give their daughter Emma a princess party that she still talked about weeks later. Each success story reinforced Diana's belief that small acts of kindness could create powerful change. She had started contributing to the foundation as a way to honor generosity, but she was discovering that the act of giving was transforming her own perspective on life. At the same time, was experiencing his own transformation. The success of the Sweet Dreams Foundation had inspired him to look for other ways to use his business resources to help local families. He had started a lunch program at Industries, where employees could contribute to provide weekend meals for children at the local elementary school who qualified for free lunches during the week. Had also begun visiting the bakery regularly, not to check on the foundation, but because he genuinely enjoyed the sense of community he found there. He often sat at a corner table with his laptop, working on business emails while listening to the conversations and interactions that made Sweet Dreams Bakery special. One afternoon, while was working at his usual table, he overheard Harold talking to Sarah about a new challenge the foundation was facing. A local family had requested help with a birthday cake for their son, who had special dietary needs due to severe food allergies. The specialty ingredients required for an allergy-friendly cake were much more expensive than usual, and the foundation's budget was already stretched. Quietly approached the counter and asked Harold about the situation. When Harold explained the challenge, offered to cover the additional cost for specialty cakes personally. He had seen how carefully the foundation managed its regular budget, and he didn't want families with special circumstances to go without help. "Mr. Harold said, your generosity continues to amaze me, but you know, this gives me an idea. What if we expanded the foundation to help with other special needs beyond just birthday cakes?" Was intrigued. What did you have in mind? Harold explained that through the foundation, they had met families dealing with all kinds of challenges. Children starting school who needed supplies, families struggling to afford holiday gifts, parents trying to pay for summer camp or sports equipment for their kids. "Maybe we could create different funds, Harold suggested. Birthday cakes could be just one part of helping families celebrate and provide opportunities for their children. Thought about Harold's suggestion as he drove home that evening. The Sweet Dreams Foundation had already exceeded his expectations in terms of community impact and involvement. Expanding it could help even more families, but it would also require more careful organization and additional resources. The next morning made a decision that would change the trajectory of both his business and personal life. He called his lawyer and asked him to research the legal requirements for establishing a private family foundation. If the Sweet Dreams Foundation had shown him anything, it was that systematic approaches to community assistance could create lasting change. Was beginning to envision something larger than he had ever imagined when he walked into that bakery on a rainy afternoon. He was starting to see a path toward using his business success to address the everyday struggles that families like Diana's faced throughout their community. But first, he wanted to do something that he had been thinking about for weeks. He wanted to properly thank Diana Washington for inspiring the foundation and for showing him what it really meant to pay kindness forward. He realized it was time for him to reach out to her directly and see if they could work together to expand the impact they had both discovered they were passionate about creating. Didn't yet know that Diana had been hopping for the same opportunity. Both of them had found that their brief encounter in the bakery had changed their perspectives on how individual actions could spend the weekend thinking about how to approach Diana. He didn't want to seem intrusive or make her feel uncomfortable, but he genuinely wanted to thank her for the inspiration she had provided and explore whether they could work together on expanding their community assistance efforts. On Monday morning, decided the most respectful approach would be to go through Harold at the bakery. He called Sweet Dreams Bakery and asked Harold if he would be willing to contact Diana and see if she might be interested in meeting to discuss the foundation's future. "I think Diana would be thrilled to meet with you," Harold said immediately. "She's mentioned several times how much she'd like to properly thank you, and honestly, she's had some really good ideas about how we could help more families. I think you two would work well together." Harold called Diana at the grocery store during her break that afternoon. When he explained that wanted to meet with her to discuss expanding their foundation work, Diana felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "He really wants to meet with me?" Diana asked. "I mean, I know he's the one who bought cake, but I assumed he'd want to keep his distance. Wealthy people usually don't get personally involved in things like this." Harold chuckled. "Doesn't seem like your typical wealthy person. He's been coming into the bakery regularly, and he always asks about the families we're helping. I think he's genuinely committed to this work." Diana agreed to meet with at the bakery on Thursday evening after her shift at the grocery store. Harold offered to stay late to facilitate the meeting and provide a comfortable space for their conversation. As Thursday approached, both and Diana found themselves thinking carefully about what they wanted to say. Prepared notes about his ideas for expanding their assistance programs, but he also wanted to understand Diana's perspective and make sure any expansion honored the community-focused spirit she had established. Diana, meanwhile, had been developing her own ideas based on her conversations with customers at the grocery store and her observations about what local families really needed. She had written down her thoughts in a notebook, but she worried that her ideas might seem too ambitious or impractical to someone with business experience. Thursday evening, Diana arrived at Sweet Dreams Bakery a few minutes before their planned meeting time. She had changed out of her grocery store uniform into her best dress, a simple blue outfit that she wore to church and special occasions. Despite her nervousness, she felt confident about the ideas she wanted to share. Arrived right on time, carrying a leather portfolio, but dressed more casually than Diana had expected. He wore khakis and a button-down shirt instead of the expensive suit he had been wearing when they first met. Diana appreciated that he seemed to be trying to make their meeting feel comfortable and informal. Harold welcomed them both and led them to a small table in the corner of the bakery where they could talk privately. He brought them coffee and some of his fresh-baked cookies, then discreetly returned to his office to give them space for their conversation. "Diana," began, "I want to start by thanking you for inspiring the Sweet Dreams Foundation. When I bought that birthday cake, I was just trying to help one little girl have a special day. I had no idea it would lead to something that has helped so many families." Diana smiled warmly. "Mister, I should be thanking you, not just for the cake, but for showing me that it's possible to make a difference. Before's birthday, I felt like we were invisible. Your kindness made me realize that everyone deserves to feel seen and valued. Was struck by Diana's eloquence and insight. Please call me, and I have to say, what you've created with this foundation is far more impressive than anything I did. You took your own limited resources and used them to help other people. That takes real courage and vision. Diana opened her notebook and shared her ideas for expanding their assistance programs. She had identified several areas where local families struggled. School supplies at the beginning of each year, winter coats for children, fees for sports and extracurricular activities, and emergency assistance for families facing unexpected crises like car repairs or medical bills. I've been thinking about this systematically, Diana explained. Birthday cakes are wonderful, but they're just special moments. What if we could also help with the everyday challenges that make it hard for families to provide opportunities for their children? Listened intently, impressed by the thoughtfulness of Diana's proposals. She had clearly spent considerable time researching the needs in their community and thinking about practical solutions. These are excellent ideas, said. I've been thinking along similar lines, but you have insights into family needs that I wouldn't have considered. I think we could accomplish a lot if we worked together. Explained his idea for establishing a larger foundation that could address multiple aspects of family assistance, while maintaining the personal, community-focused approach that made Sweet Dreams Foundation special. I'm thinking about something we could call the Community Care Foundation, said. It would include the birthday cake program, but also provide assistance in all the areas you mentioned. The key would be making sure families feel supported, not. Diana nodded enthusiastically. That's exactly right. When you bought cake, you didn't make me feel like a charity case. You made me feel like a good mother whose love for her daughter was worth celebrating. That's the feeling we want every family to have. As their conversation continued, and Diana discovered they shared similar values about helping people while preserving their dignity. They both believed that assistance should be temporary support to help families through challenging times, not permanent dependence. And they both wanted to create programs that brought the community together rather than dividing people into helpers and recipients. Shared his business experience with managing large-scale operations, while Diana contributed her understanding of what it felt like to need help and her insights into how assistance could be provided respectfully. By the end of their meeting, they had outlined a comprehensive plan for expanding their foundation work. Diana said as their meeting was concluding, I'd like to offer you a position as the community director for the new foundation. You understand the families we want to help better than anyone, and you have the vision to make sure our programs really work. Diana was quiet for a moment, touched but also surprised by the offer. That's incredibly generous, but I'm not sure I'm qualified for something like that. I don't have a college degree or professional experience managing programs. Smiled, you have something much more valuable than credentials. You have wisdom, compassion, and real understanding of what our community needs. Plus, you've already proven you can inspire people to get involved and create positive change. Diana asked for time to think about the position offer, but she was clearly excited about the possibility of expanding their work together. They agreed to meet again the following week to discuss the practical details of establishing the Community Care Foundation. Over the next few days, both and Diana found themselves energized by their partnership, appreciated having someone who could keep him grounded in the real experiences of the families they wanted to help. Diana was excited about the possibility of using her insights to create systematic solutions to problems she had observed for years. Diana also talked about the potential job opportunity. At 8 years old, didn't fully understand the complexities of foundation work, but she grasped the basic idea that her mother might be able to help other families the way it helped them. Mama said, if you take this job, does that mean you could help other kids get princess cakes for their birthdays? Diana laughed. Maybe some princess cakes, but also other kinds of help, like making sure kids have warm coats in winter and supplies they need for school. Thought about this seriously. I think you should do it, Mama. You're really good at helping people feel better. Meanwhile, was working with his lawyers and accountants to establish the legal structure for the Community Care Foundation. He wanted to create something that could operate independently of his business interests while still benefiting from his financial support and organizational experience. Also spoke with Jennifer, his assistant, about his plans to spend more time on foundation work. Jennifer had noticed that seemed more energetic and focused since he had become involved with community assistance efforts. "Mister," Jennifer said, "I've never seen you this excited about a project. It's like you found something that makes all your business success feel meaningful in a new way." Jennifer's observation was accurate. Had always found satisfaction in building his company and creating jobs for his employees. But the foundation work connected him to a sense of purpose that went beyond financial success. He was beginning to see how his resources could address problems he had never really understood before meeting Diana. When and Diana met again the following week, Diana had made her decision. She accepted the community director position, with the understanding that she would continue working part-time at the grocery store until the foundation was fully established. She wanted to maintain her connection to the day-to-day realities of working families, and she also needed to ensure financial stability for herself and during the transition. Their second meeting focused on practical planning. They discussed how to structure programs to maintain dignity for recipients, how to involve local businesses and community organizations, and how to measure the impact of their work. Diana suggested starting with a pilot program focused on school supplies for the upcoming academic year. Many families struggled to afford the extensive lists of supplies that teachers required, and children often felt embarrassed when they couldn't bring the same materials as their classmates. "We could partner with local stores to buy supplies in bulk," Diana explained. "Then families could come to the foundation and shop for what their children need. It would feel more like shopping than receiving charity." Loved the shopping concept. "We could set it up like a store, but everything would be free. Children could come with their parents and choose their own backpacks and supplies." They decided to call this pilot program Back to School Marketplace and planned to launch it in August, about a month before schools started. Harold offered to host the marketplace at the bakery during weekend hours when the space wasn't being used for regular business. As news of the expanded foundation spread through the community, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Other local businesses offered to contribute supplies or volunteer time. The elementary school principal, Mrs., who happened to be Diana's neighbor, provided them with information about which families might benefit most from the program. Lisa from the community newspaper wanted to write another story about the foundation's expansion, but Diana agreed that they wanted to focus the publicity on the families being helped rather than on their own partnership. The back-to-school marketplace opened on a Saturday morning in late August with 40 families pre-registered to participate. And Diana had transformed the bakery's main room into a colorful shopping space with tables displaying backpacks, notebooks, pencils, crayons, glue sticks, and all the other supplies children needed for school. Diana had insisted on making the experience feel special for the children, so they had decorated the space with balloons and created shopping lists that made each child feel like they were on an important mission to gather their school supplies. Worked alongside Diana and several other volunteers, helping families find the right sizes and types of supplies. He was amazed to see children's faces light up as they selected their own backpacks and filled them with everything they needed for a successful school year. One moment particularly moved him. A 7-year-old boy named David carefully selected a red backpack and spent several minutes choosing between different sets of colored pencils. His mother explained to that David loved to draw, but had never owned a complete set of colored pencils. "This is going to be the best school year ever," David told as he carefully arranged his new supplies in his backpack. "I can draw anything I want now." Diana watched the marketplace with deep satisfaction. She saw families who had been worried about affording school supplies leaving with everything their children needed, plus the confidence that came from feeling supported by their community. At the end of the day, Diana sat together in the empty bakery, surrounded by tables that had been cleared of supplies but still decorated with colorful balloons. They were both tired but exhilarated by the success of their first major program. "You know," Diana said, 6 months ago I was worried about affording a birthday cake. Now I'm helping organize programs that support dozens of families. Life can change in the most unexpected ways." Nodded. "I used to think success was about growing my company and increasing profits. But working with you and seeing the direct impact we can have on families has shown me what success really looks like." As they planned their next programs, a winter coat drive, and an emergency assistance fund. Both and Diana realized that their partnership was creating something neither of them could have accomplished alone. The Community Care Foundation was becoming a model for how business success and community wisdom could work together to address real needs in meaningful ways. But they were about to discover that their work together would lead to challenges, and the Community Care Foundation's success attracted attention beyond. 6 months after the back-to-school marketplace, received a phone call from Dr. Williams, Director of Social Services for the surrounding county. She had heard about their innovative programs and wanted to discuss expanding their model to other communities. Dr. Williams explained during their phone conversation, "What you and Diana Washington have created is exactly what we need in rural communities throughout our region. Would you be interested in sharing your model with other towns?" Was flattered but cautious. "Dr. Williams, I appreciate the recognition, but what makes our foundation work is Diana's deep understanding of our specific community. I'm not sure how well our approach would translate to other places." Dr. Williams had anticipated this concern. "That's exactly why your model is so valuable. You've proven that effective community assistance requires local knowledge and local leadership. We're not asking you to manage programs in other towns. We're asking you to help train local leaders who could adapt your approach to their own communities." After discussing the opportunity with Diana, they agreed to meet with Dr. Williams to learn more about her vision. The meeting took place at the Community Care Foundation's new office. A small space had rented in downtown that served as headquarters for their expanding programs. Diana had been working as community director for 3 months, and the position had transformed her perspective on her own capabilities. She had discovered that her years of managing household finances on a tight budget had given her excellent organizational skills. Her experience navigating social services agencies as a single mother had taught her how to create systems that were both efficient and respectful. And her natural empathy helped her connect with families in ways that traditional social workers sometimes struggled to achieve. Dr. Williams arrived at their meeting with a comprehensive proposal. The county had received a federal grant to address rural poverty, and they wanted to use part of the funding to establish Community Care Foundation chapters in 6 small towns throughout the region. Each chapter would be locally managed, Dr. Williams explained, but you could provide training and ongoing support to help them avoid common pitfalls and learn from your successes. And Diana looked at each other, both thinking about the implications of such expansion. Their work-in had been deeply personal and community-specific. Could they maintain that intimate approach while operating on a larger scale? "What would our role be exactly?" Diana asked. "I want to make sure we're not imposing our solutions on communities that might have different needs." Dr. Williams smiled, recognizing the wisdom in Diana's question. "We'd want you to develop a training program that teaches the principles behind your success rather than prescribing specific activities. Each community would adapt your approach based on their own circumstances and needs." Over the following weeks, and Diana worked together to analyze what had made their foundation successful. They identified key principles: start small and build trust, involve local businesses as partners rather than just donors, create programs that preserve dignity for participants, and always have someone with personal experience of financial struggle in leadership roles. They also recognized challenges they had overcome: balancing assistance with empowerment, managing growth without losing personal connections, and maintaining community involvement as programs became more systematic. Diana suggested that their training program should include a requirement that each new chapter be co-directed by someone with business experience and someone with personal experience of the challenges they were addressing. "And I work well together because we bring different perspectives," Diana explained to Dr. Williams. "He understands systems and resources. I understand what it feels like to need help and how assistance can be provided respectfully. Every chapter needs that combination." Added, "We also learned that sustainable programs need to involve the whole community. It can't just be wealthy people helping poor people. Everyone needs to feel like they have something to contribute." Dr. Williams was impressed by their analysis and agreed to structure the grant program around their principles. The Community Care Foundation would receive funding to develop training materials and provide 6 months of mentoring support to each new chapter. As they began developing their training program, and Diana faced their first significant disagreement. Wanted to create detailed operational manuals and systematic procedures that new chapters could follow. Diana worried that too much structure might discourage local creativity and community ownership. Diana said during one of their planning meetings, "I understand that you're used to running a business where consistency and efficiency are important, but community work is different. Each family has unique circumstances, and each town has its own culture." Initially felt frustrated by Diana's resistance to his organizational approach. "Diana, these new chapters are going to be managing significant amounts of money and serving vulnerable families. They need clear guidelines to prevent mistakes and ensure accountability." Their disagreement led to several tense conversations as they worked to find a balance between structure and flexibility. Harold, who had become an informal advisor to their foundation, suggested that they visit one of the communities that wanted to establish a chapter. "Maybe if you see what another town is actually like, you can figure out how to give them what they need without imposing what might not work for them," Harold suggested. And Diana decided to visit Riverside, a rural community about an hour from that had applied to establish the first Community Care Foundation chapter. Riverside had a population of about 3,000 people, with an economy based primarily on farming and a large chicken processing plant. During their visit, they met with Mayor Johnson, several local business owners, and a group of community members who were interested in starting the foundation chapter. The conversations revealed both similarities and differences between Riverside and. Like Riverside had working families who struggled to afford extras like birthday cakes and school supplies. But unlike, Riverside had limited retail options, making bulk purchasing more challenging. The community also had a significant Spanish-speaking population that required bilingual approaches to outreach and services. Most importantly, Riverside already had informal networks of community support that had been functioning for years. Church groups regularly collected donations for families in crisis, and the local elementary school had a volunteer program that provided backpacks and supplies for children who needed them. "We don't want to replace what's already working," explained Maria, a teacher who had been involved in the school's assistance programs for several years. "But we'd like to make our efforts more organized and sustainable." Diana immediately understood what Maria meant. You want to build on what you already have rather than starting from scratch. Realized that his impulse to create detailed operational manuals might actually interfere with Riverside's desire to formalize and expand their existing support networks. The training program they developed needed to help communities identify their own strengths and build on them rather than imposing external models. After their visit to Riverside, and Diana redesigned their training approach. Instead of operational manuals, they created a facilitated process that would help each community assess their current resources, identify unmet needs, and develop programs that fit their specific circumstances. "We'll teach principles and share examples," Diana explained, "but each community will create their own solutions." Contributed his business expertise by developing tools for financial management, program evaluation, and volunteer coordination. But he structured these tools as resources that communities could adapt rather than requirements they had to follow. Their first training session took place in Riverside and attracted representatives from all 6 communities that had applied for foundation chapters. And Diana worked together to facilitate workshops on community assessment, program development, and sustainable funding. Diana led discussions about maintaining dignity for program participants and involving people with lived experience in program leadership, facilitated sessions on financial management and partnerships with local businesses. The training was more successful than either of them had anticipated. Representatives from each community left with specific plans for establishing their chapters and clear timelines for launching their first programs. 6 months later, all 6 Community Care Foundation chapters had been established and were operating successful programs. Each chapter had developed programs that reflected their community's specific needs and culture, but all were guided by the principles and Diana had identified. The chapter in Riverside had created a bilingual family support program that provided assistance with everything from school supplies to immigration paperwork. A chapter in a mountain community had focused on helping families afford winter heating costs and snow gear for children. A farming community had developed a program that helped families during seasonal unemployment periods. Dr. Williams was so impressed with the results that she recommended the Community Care Foundation model for statewide implementation. And Diana suddenly found themselves invited to speak at conferences and consulted by organizations throughout the country. But even as their work gained national recognition, both and Diana remained committed to their original community in. They had learned that sustainable change required ongoing attention and personal connection. Every week, Diana still visited families who had been helped by their programs, checking on their progress and listening to suggestions for improvements. Continued to have coffee at Sweet Dreams Bakery, staying connected to the community conversations that had originally inspired their work. Now 9 years old, had become something of a foundation mascot. She often accompanied Diana to community events, and her perspective as a child who had benefited from the foundation's work provided valuable insights into program effectiveness. "Mama," said one evening as Diana was preparing for a conference presentation, "do you think the little kids in those other towns will get to feel as special as I did on my birthday with the princess cake?" Diana smiled, remembering the day that had started everything. "I hope so, sweetheart. I hope they'll get to feel exactly that special." As the first anniversary of the Community Care Foundation approached, and Diana reflected on how much their lives had changed since that rainy afternoon at Sweet Dreams Bakery, had reduced his involvement in day-to-day business operations at Industries to focus more time on foundation work. Diana had discovered leadership abilities she never knew she possessed and was considering pursuing a college degree in social work. Their partnership had evolved into a genuine friendship based on shared values and complementary skills, had learned to appreciate Diana's insights into family dynamics and community relationships. Diana had gained confidence in her ability to think strategically and manage complex programs. More importantly, they had proven that individual acts of kindness could create systemic change when combined with sustained commitment and community involvement. The birthday cake that had bought for had grown into a network of foundation chapters that were helping hundreds of families throughout their region. At the anniversary celebration, held at Sweet Dreams Bakery where it all began, Harold presented, and Diana, with a special cake decorated with a replica of the original princess castle that had inspired everything, was invited to make a wish and blow out the candles, just as she had done a year earlier. As closed her eyes to make her wish, Diana and stood together, both thinking about the unexpected journey that had brought them to this moment. They had started as strangers who shared a brief encounter in a bakery. Now they were partners in work that had touched more lives than either could have imagined. Opened her eyes and blew out the candles while everyone applauded. When Diana asked what she had wished for, smiled mysteriously. "I wish that other kids would get to have someone like Mr. help their mamas make their birthdays special," she said. "And I think my wish is already coming true." As the celebration continued around them, and Diana knew that their work was far from finished. They had learned that building stronger communities required ongoing effort and constant attention to changing needs. But they also knew they had created something sustainable and meaningful that would continue growing long after their own involvement ended. The simple act of buying a birthday cake had taught them both that individual kindness, when combined with systematic thinking and community involvement, could create lasting change that benefited everyone. Their story had become proof that everyday moments of generosity could grow into movements that transformed entire communities, one family at a time neither of them had anticipated, testing their partnership and pushing them to find even more innovative ways to support the families in their community-wide transformation. They were about to discover that their shared commitment to helping families could accomplish far more than either of them had imagined possible. Had been just the beginning of something beautiful